Welcome back to the Department of Peace. My name is Jeremy Courtney. Jessica Courtney here again today. How you doing?
Doing all right. It's been a
week.
Yeah. A harder week than other times, I think, when we've said it's been a week.
we probably have said that a few times. Not sure when this will get aired. We don't always air things sequentially, but just drop a few things that have been affecting us and many others this week.
Yeah. The budget bill just passed the Senate this week, which was pretty disappointing to me. And I know a lot of other people, and just I think came with a lot of grief. And then, we're just coming out of a couple of weeks with missiles flying overhead between Israel, Iran, the U.S., into this U.S. reality about the budget bill and what that could mean for people we care about. And then just a couple of days ago, one of our staff was killed in Gaza and by an Israeli airstrike while she was sitting in a cafe trying to upload a video of the really important work that she'd been a part of with our team that day. And it just is super overwhelming and makes me want to climb into a cave and just like wait out the next couple of years. But after doing some of that this week and trying to just sit in the grief and figure out how to move the grief and the frustration into something more positive for the world.
The thing I can't get over, reports are that an Israeli F-16 shot a missile into this beachside cafe, and I just can't get over the visual of a fighter pilot swooping out into the sea, coming back toward the land, literally seeing out his cockpit window a bunch of people playing on the beach and sitting beachside under tents and umbrellas and pushing a red button like Top Gun. Like it's just Top Gun and movies we grew up on playing in my head, which often just play so innocent, even though they're like literally paid for U.S. military propaganda movies. But seeing that through, if that's how it played out and that's how it's being reported, seeing that through the lens of Malak and the 27 plus others who were killed in that cafe, like the idea that they could have literally seen the jet swoop out over the ocean, could have seen that F-16 coming back toward them, may or may not have a discussion about, and dude like literally pushes a red button and fires a missile into a beachside cafe. Like the insanity, the lack of humanity, or maybe it's the fullness of humanity on display in that it's really affected me this week. There's something really gross and sick about what Americans pioneered in launching missiles from Nevada and just playing video games with people's lives and predator drones and like not being near the conflict. But there's also really sick about killing someone up close, relatively up close, and like being able to look out your cockpit at people enjoying their lives for just a moment amidst the genocide and saying, no, I think I want to end that.
Yeah, and the way that it all gets justified just by saying some bad actor was in the cafe it's untenable. Like how can we, as humans around the globe, how can we continue to accept this narrative that killing 20 to kill one is a realistic and supported way to go to war with one another? You know, there was a time when civilians were more protected, and militaries fought militaries. But it's the West that has changed this narrative forever by using their big military systems and just saying, oh, it's just collateral damage. It's what we had to do to get this one big bad guy. And it has now become the way that we wage war. It's not the exception to the rule. It is the rule that no matter what, no matter whom or what is damaged in the process,
the ends always justify.
The ends justify the means. And it's just heavy to sit with. It's something that we have been face to face with time and time again since we moved to the Middle East, where so many of the Western world plays out these real like wars with their direct enemies and proxy wars, and seeing firsthand the way that this has escalated, the way that we as the U.S. have normalized it. I don't know where it stops, but it has to stop. Like we're so far beyond the gray that it should be anyone looking at the results of what's happening should be able to see how wrong it is and put a stop to it.
To me, it highlights how content and trapped ultimately we are in our little boxes that we call us, my kind of people, and not my kind of people, not us. And Palestinians have just, for a lot of people around the world, have just forever been they're not us. I mean, just wave our hands, maybe wring our hands a little bit, but it's a damn shame what's going on over there. But they're not us. Like, that could never happen to us. We are different. Or in some cases, like, the unspoken thing is this default thing that we have the complexion for protection.
Yeah.
And Arabs, Palestinians in particular, Muslims in general, and a lot of others, they are collateral damage. When a U.S. soldier is killed, it's typically a big deal. When an Israeli soldier is killed, it's a to-do. But when a civilian, a child, when Israel commands an Israeli soldier to shoot a child, like, that's still somehow just damn shame about them bullets.
Yeah.
It's funny how they keep finding their way to people.
Yeah, so it's been a very heavy, grief-filled week. And at the same time as holding the grief and holding the anger of what this week has been, and just everything leading up to it. Like, it feels like we can't catch a break. I keep looking for ways to catch the break because I don't want to be pulled down into disillusionment. I don't want to be pulled down into inaction. I don't want to be pulled down into this state where I'm ready to give up, where I think it's all for naught, where everything around the world to do feels palliative until things get worse. I'm not a palliative care kind of person. You know, I'm the kind of person that does things with great hope that if we can go one more day, that if we can make this small change today, that it's going to affect for larger change in the future. But it has taken some real work this week to keep myself at that place. And I'm not staying at that, but like to climb back up into that place and to keep hoping and to keep trying for what could be a better future.
We've got our producer and colleague Josh is working on a story right now with a death doula. And it may actually be out by the time this is released, but I'm really excited to listen and learn more about that work, about that service, that ministry of guiding each other home into the light.
Mm.
And yet I believe that's like an individual ministry. I don't want to be a death doula for the world. Okay, so, but maybe is there a time and a place? Are we called? Are we being summoned to be death doulas for this world, this dying kingdom, the way things are right now? Like, I think I can get on board with that. I just don't know how to do it. I've always thought I was more the midwife, the gardener, the planter, not the death doula.
Mm-hmm.
And it does feel like it's hard to see the life being born right now. It's easier to see all that we're losing.
Mm. Yeah. I was on a call with friends the day after Malak was killed, and I was they asked how I was, and I told them how heavy this was sitting with me, and we had spent 45 minutes on another topic, laughing and enjoying each other's company. And even as I talked about Malak, I was smiling, and they said, how can you be laughing with us right now? How can you smile through this? And I was able to recognize how odd that may feel to them. Most of them were in the US and not faced with this much death on a daily basis. And my response was just like, part of it is practice, unfortunate practice that we've had through the years. And the other part of it was, I'm just so proud of how she lived. It's so like challenging to me, the way that she lived when you've worked with people who are living in these circumstances the way that we have for this many years, and that the very people delivering the food, delivering the water, telling the stories are the very people who themselves and their families are living in the tents,
who need it the most often.
Yeah, they need it the most, but they're like they and their families are affected by the very thing. Our teams at Humanite do not go into places to deliver and then leave those places. For our entire history of being in humanitarian aid and forming teams, it is always people from those places. They're from their communities. And the kind of strength that it takes to wake up after being bombarded day after day after day for 2 years and choose, and I mean choose, hope, choose future for your community, rather than like just rightly feel so hopeless in those moments and stay in your tent and protect yourself. Like, even the act of going to the cafe was an act of defiance, was an act of purpose, a hope for a better life. She spent that entire day giving and loving women, helping to give them tools to use with their children to help them endure the horror that every family is going through right now in Gaza. That's how she spent that day. And then she sent them home with care packages full of hygiene items, pads, shampoos, soaps, dishwashing detergent, like really practical gifts to get them through the next month. And just, it's beautiful. And if Malak can get up day after day after day and continue giving to her community and be the hope of her community, and then tell their stories so that they won't be forgotten, and end the day in reconciliation in a cafe, drinking tea with friends, using the internet to upload these stories so the world will know, like, it makes me want to be better. It makes me want to be planning now for how I can build the resilience I need to be that kind of person in the communities that I find myself among.
A lot of wars, a lot of conflicts, a lot of interpersonal fights get the like both sides treatment. And in this case, Israel Palestine, like I'm so happy to play both sides. Like I'm so happy to put both sides on display, you know, because it's like you've got F-16 pilot flying into a beachfront cafe, looking out of his cockpit and pushing a red button to drop a missile on them. And to that side, I can say, what a horrible way to live. What a disgusting propaganda to give your life to. What a bankrupt ideology and way of seeing your neighbor. And on the other side, missile inbound, sitting in a cafe after the day of service and the life of service and the life of neighborliness, the life of risk that you just described, that Malak and frankly a lot of others in that cafe are living. I can say, what a way to go. Like, what a way to go. What a way to live. The question of joy, the question of smiling is it's an interesting one. I deleted something from social media because I felt like it might be seen externally as weirdly like celebratory in this particular window of time. But I don't know, that's just not how it feels. That's not how it's ever really felt to us. All these things have always just been mixed. It's not been for us that there are these linear periods. Some communities do it this way, but that there's this linear time of doing this when you have to like not smile and then you move into a time. It's just life can get really, life is complicated and life is full of all of those things, and to learn joy, to learn a kind of peace, not the fullness of peace, not the kind of peace that's rooted in justice, but a kind of personal determination that can't be snuffed out by injustice. To learn that practice has been, even I'll just say personally, one of the greatest gifts that I've learned from Iraqi, Syrian, Lebanese, Palestinian, Ukrainian friends across the world doing this work and living this life.
Yeah, it's such an important practice. I think the practice of joy, of not being defeated by the world, but saying, this is the life that I get today. This is the life that I have. What can I find joy in? Like, to practice being joy finders is maybe one of the most important forms of resistance. Because if we get really good at resistance, but it turns us into cynical, hateful people, then whatever we might achieve is still going to leave us wanting. But if we can figure out how to use joy and use living to our fullest as part of our resistance, to use invitation and not allow ourselves to become cynical and hateful, then regardless of the outcome of our resistance, we still win. We still got to live the fullness of our life. We still got to bless others with our lives. We still got to be part of that fight for justice that all rolls into the world becoming better. And I have to remind myself that. And I have to have people around me to remind myself of that. You know, this week I had to look back at all the things that we've gotten to do together with Malak. And just remember and have so much gratitude that we got to partner with her for her community, that her partnership with us gave her the fuel that she needed to be who she was in her community, and that our partnership with her allowed us access to the community, allowed us to be helpers for the last 2 years. And there's such a deep joy in that kind of partnership, that kind of perseverance, and that kind of resistance. And it makes me want to lean in and push further. So, I know the majority of our audience is likely living in the U.S., probably feeling a lot of these same feelings about the way that our current government is moving forward. Everything from prisons being built to entrap those who haven't committed a crime, to the way that the budget bill has been written and is likely going to pass. And I don't want to, regardless of when this podcast airs, I don't want to miss this moment to talk about the possibilities for us going forward, even if it passes. I've seen so much resistance in the weeks building up to this week. And I think there was so much hope that the Senate was going to turn things around. It didn't. And in some ways made it even worse. And so I've started to see people online who have been really resistant, who've been saying, call and write letters and do all of the things. I've this week seen them say, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I feel like it's not working. I can't show up here anymore.
You're not scared of that.
And I can't pretend that the other things going on in my life are important right now. And it just feels like, yeah, that's the spirit weighing on those who have been trying to be proactive and do what is within their power to resist what those in power are doing. And I just wanted to take a minute to say, it's okay to step back. It's okay to feel powerless and sit down for a minute. But even if the worst form of this bill passes, we as individuals still have power and we still have opportunity. And I've been thinking about what is my response? What am I going to do when this passes? This is going to affect it's going to affect so many people that I love and care for. And it's going to make things harder for us in some of our businesses. And yet, where is the opportunity to show up like Malak? Where's the opportunity to lean into solutions rather than let those in power, let the decisions they're making and the systems that we can't fix that are going to bring harm? Where is our power to actually move that forward? And last night I was just praying and meditating and sitting with myself, and I thought, one really interesting thing about this bill is that those who have more wealth, and therefore I'm going to say more power, are actually going to benefit from this bill. And that doesn't mean just the richest. That doesn't just mean the Trumps and the Elons and the Bezoses and all of those people. It means even your like average Joe, upper middle class person is going to benefit from this bill if it passes as it's written today. And my thought was, well, if a lot of us are going to be getting that tax relief, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to put it in our pockets to store for a rainy day? Or are we going to see this as the government handing us seed money to start initiatives that are actually going to create a different kind of social net for those who have been harmed by this bill? What would happen if we pooled those resources? What would happen if we took the money that we would have paid to the government and instead we pull it together and we become the social safety net for our communities? I think that we have lost that practice, or we're not very well practiced in being individuals who come together to be the social safety net for our communities. And so what if we imagine together and dream together what that can actually look like? What if we start putting those things in practice? Because there's a lot they can take away. But what if we started buying medications for our neighbors? I was thinking last night, I wonder how many medications get thrown away. What if there was a kind of medication library? I'm not talking about if things are legal or not legal right now. I'm just saying, if we use our imaginations and we use what resources we do have, our time, money, facilities, whatever we have that we have power over with our hands, and we imagine what our communities could look like, what does that mean? What if those who are entrepreneurs could start new businesses that could employ people to the extent that they don't need to be on food stamps, that they don't need to have Medicaid because they're actually provided with insurance? I'm not saying these are have-tos, saying this could be an invitation to see opportunities that we haven't had to see before because we've relied on systems to create that kind of social net for people. And what if we've gotten lazy relying on the systems? And what if this is our chance to take back our power and become the providers of those safety nets? And then I started thinking, I wonder what keeps us from doing that. I wonder why our go-to is to maintain the systems however broken they are, rather than create something better. And as I sat in this kind of self-inquiry, I just tried to raise to the surface what might hold me back. And the first feeling that came up for me was someone saying that I'm doing it wrong. And for a lot of people, that may not even be an issue for you. For me, it's just a huge pain point, that someone would cancel me or advertise that in my attempt to help, I did it the wrong way. And it just made me wonder how many other people might feel that way. How many rules have been put in place over the last decade about how you should help that might actually prevent people from helping? And so for our community, for the Department of Peace, we already know that we're a group of people who want to do things differently. We know we're a group of people who aren't satisfied with the status quo. We know that the world could be so much better. And so what could we do to overcome that fear of doing things wrong, and to, with our best intentions and our best plans and all of the knowledge that we could bring along with us, what could we do to provide these social safety nets for our community and to throw off the fear of doing harm? Because there is not a person alive in the world today who is not experimenting. Even the oldest of us just got here, hasn't been here long enough to be able to really know that every action they take is going to create only good. But the people out there who are willing to do that experimentation for good or bad, like they're just going for it. And most of that is leading us down a worse path than a good path, because they don't have hopeful intentions about the world, about the most vulnerable in the world. So what if those of us that do have hopeful intentions for the most vulnerable in the world, what about those of us who do believe that we can all live a much better life in integration together? What if those of us who don't believe that there's actually, when someone gets something that I lose out, what if we really believe there's enough to go around? What if we did that same experimenting? What if we pulled our money together, and rather than fought the politicians with our money, we just created good, and we created new systems that the government wasn't able to touch? I don't know what's possible, but after sitting with some of that last night, I felt so much more hopeful. And as I woke up this morning, I was looking at the businesses that we have and thinking, what does it look like to use these tools to become better social safety nets in our communities? And I know this monologue has gone on for a little bit, but I just want to tell a story, because one of the things in the last couple of years that I've become really involved with are care homes for men with mental illness. And when I spend time with these guys, it never is lost on me how giving they are. Not just with their money, but also with their perceptions of one another. They are so forgiving because they know the extent of their limits.
And how they've been misperceived and labeled.
And they know that they have bad days, and they want to be able to come back from those bad days with better medical regulations and in like their medicines and all of that. And they want to be accepted in the community. And so there's this one guy, and his responsibility in this community that I'm thinking about is to set the tables for every meal. He's an older gentleman, and he fights schizophrenia. And some days he just doesn't feel right, and he knows it. They're just bad days. And he has this phrase where if he shows up and he really just can't get the table set that day, he'll say, the electronics are messed up. The electronics are messed up. And everyone in the home understands what that means. And without fail, if he communicates that for himself, one of the other guys will immediately step up and say, that's okay, I've got this. I've been wanting to set the tables. And the guys who are having their great days, they step in and they set the table. And they do it without judgment, and they do it without fault. Well, it was your job to set the table, and you didn't set the table. And this plays out in this home day after day, minute after minute. I mean, I've seen one of the guys just all out punch someone else in the nose. The guy with his nose bleeding is saying, it's okay, he didn't know who I was. He didn't remember that I'm me and that I'm his friend. And there's such a beauty in this kind of raw acceptance of one another in this community. I mean, they live together, 2 to 3 guys in a room. Everybody's eating together. They go to counseling together. They're in community together, and they have just chosen acceptance of one another. And this is a like revolving door kind of community. It doesn't matter who steps in the door. Their rule is acceptance. Their rule is we're going to move forward in community together. And it's the most beautiful picture of what humanity can be. And how brave would we be to say, I just messed up. I just messed up. If we thought we were surrounded by a group of people who were going to say, that's all right, I got it. I got it. Take a beat. Sit down for a minute. Come back when you're feeling better. Come back when you can do this better. We're here. I hope that's what we're creating here. I hope that's what we're all becoming together, is this place where we don't have to be afraid to experiment and to help the people around us, because we're coming out of a community that's going to say, it's okay. Let's keep moving forward. Yes, there's going to be missteps along the way. Yes, not everyone's going to get food if we cook a big pot of food. Some people are going to be at the end of the line and there's not going to be enough. Yes, we're going to create a medicine library, and people can come and get what they need. And we're not always going to have what some people need. But rather than fear the lack, what happens if we lean into what could be possible, if we're willing to make a few mistakes along the way?
I think one of those rules that has been so full of good intentions and so suppressing of a lot of good starts is the idea that intentions don't matter. That was a well-intended phrase, a well-intended maxim, a well-intended rule. But I think what it's ultimately helped create, maybe part of what it's created, is people who do a little more research and do a little more listening, and maybe it's created a lot of good alongside it. I don't deny that. But I think one of the things that it's created is a lot of fear to even start, and a lot of fear to even try. In the realm of the helping your neighbor, social impacts, whatever you want to call it, making change, charity, philanthropy, whatever, any and all of it. One of the ascendant ideas of the last 2 decades is that good intentions don't matter. And there's a truth in that. We've seen a lot of people come probably with good intentions and do some very obvious, I don't know, bad or at least suboptimal good. But the thing about good intentions, the great thing about good intentions, is that they can be molded. Like we always say, we'd rather try to harness and guide a Mustang than lead a mule. Like someone who won't get started, someone who's stubborn, someone who's just going to dig their heels in, you can't shape and you can't guide that. A Mustang that's wild and running all over, you can harness that. And people who start and do things with good intentions, in my experience, are more often than not willing to be shaped and listen and have those good intentions kind of molded in a certain direction. What I feel like the culture that has been created around doing good over a lot of the last 2 decades is effectively a suppression of a lot of that. And so you're left with only experts, maybe, on the one hand, and a lot of activists sitting on the sidelines, maybe throwing tomatoes and just weighing in online, on the other hand, just policing everything from their point of vaunted knowledge, or maybe a personal lived experience or whatever. But I fear, and in some ways maybe even I hope, there is a hope attached to this fear. I fear that things are going to get so bad, we're not going to be allowed to have this much policing anymore. One thing I can promise you is that the people of Palestine and Gaza are not drastically policing each other's behavior every day. There's no time. There's no energy. There's no room for it. You got to dig through a trash can to find a scrap of bread, dig away. You're going to hand a scrap of trash bread to your neighbor, hand over the trash bread. Like, that's not undignifying, that's dignifying. Bring some dirty water to the camp, God bless you. Maybe we can figure out a way to boil it and clean it up. But I fear that globally, and even in particular in parts of America, we're going to see social safety nets erode, see trust erode, see divisions rise to such a degree that a lot of this policing and performative BS isn't going to persist anymore, because it's not going to be able to. It's for all the talk about privilege and stuff, that's actually a very privileged thing to be able to do, to sit and police other people's do-gooding. Like, my God, and we've done it. Like, I've done it. And maybe then on the other side, what it gives rise to and gives birth to is the kind of the best of humanity that we're seeing in Gaza today. The kind that rushes into a crater, that rushes into an airstrike, that that when a building is destroyed by Israel, you run into that building to save whoever you can, knowing that there's a really good chance a second strike is coming just to kill all the rescuers. Well, what are you going to do? Not rescue your neighbor? And I think that I don't want that for us. Don't want that for anyone, but there's certainly a character, a love built out of really hard times like that that I don't think can come through this just performative policing stuff that has prevailed over the last couple of years.
So it might be fun just to brainstorm a little bit, things that we've heard about throughout history, long history, our history, maybe without saying what we've done directly, but just ideas that we've heard of people in oppression, finding creative ways to get around the oppression. And, you know, a couple of things come to my mind immediately, like the Underground Railroad to help slaves get away from, get their freedom. That's one thing that comes to mind that I think is such a beautiful act of community to subvert wrong laws. Another one that's more recent is hearing about these underground medical networks in Iran when they were protesting a couple of years ago, and how doctors would leave their practices in the evening and they would go to work in these underground medical facilities that were funded and operated by volunteers, and because if the protester, one way that the government was capturing protesters was anyone who was injured in a protest
Medical
would
records.
go to the hospital, and so they just stationed police at the hospital and they would arrest anyone who came in with injuries. And so these underground medical networks became a way for protesters to get care, probably not as good a medical care as they would have gotten in the hospital, probably not as much medicine as they would have gotten in the hospital, but they were treated and they were able to go home and heal rather than be taken to prison where there would be no medical
Torture
access.
and worse, yeah.
What things have you heard about?
I remember when Fallujah was controlled by ISIS and then therefore blockaded by the groups that were fighting ISIS in an effort to starve out ISIS, very kind of similar on a micro scale of what's happening in Gaza today. I remember a group of people that I talked to. There were a couple of different angles. One was these old like traders whose donkeys knew the routes. And there was at least talk of, rumors of, I mean, I was
Trader, not traitor.
like
TRADER, like smugglers.
I don't want to use the word smuggler, but yes, more akin to what
Yes,
we would think of as
someone who does trade.
who does the trades,
Yes.
who trades in business and grains and whatever. So there were these old traders whose donkeys knew the routes, and there was talk of like just loading them up with not too much to draw attention, just a little bit in their saddlebags and stuff, and just sending the donkeys on their way sort of unmanned so that they would like wander their way in and out of the city, and ISIS and or the groups fighting against ISIS, because they were unmanned, just let them go. But it was a way of like breaking the blockade. Similarly, in that time, I worked on a project that we could never bring to fruition, but kind of inspired by that in the very, very, very early days of drones, like DJI, just camera drones and stuff like that. We worked for months to see if there was any way we could fly drones over the head. This is before drones were like common on the battlefield, long before like Ukraine and Russia turned them into like big war. They were unregulated. No one had them. We had the money to buy them. We thought we might have the ability to buy them in the thousands and just run fleets of drones dropping literal, like one tiny bag of flour at a time or something. And then the drone gets shut down or destroyed, and that's fine. At least we broke the blockade. But that was kind of inspired by the donkeys. Never worked out. And then a third one, similarly, ISIS and the powers that be had a hard time controlling all of the river line, all the water and all the shore. And so there were some occasional groups that broke the blockade, just kind of smuggling across rivers and things like that. All of this at great risk.
Yeah.
But unwilling to let their neighbor suffer in silence.
Yeah, I think about people who were wealthy in some of the cities where we've worked, who created business trade networks ahead of time. Not because they knew war was coming, but that's just how they did business, that were outside of banking systems, like globally regulated banking systems, and how they became the financiers of help to their community without actually losing money, because they had systems where that money could be sent to a friend in that over there. And once that friend got that money, then they would release the cash they had stored inside of their community, knowing that that money is still essentially in an account for them, waiting for them. And what is it? And it makes me wonder, like, we're spending all of this time right now writing letters and making phone calls to mostly men, and some women who will not listen to us. What if that energy was spent instead developing some of these other systems? Because it's doable. We're humans. Most of it is not illegal. It's just not thought about. And so what are these systems that we could be thinking about? If you're a prepper and you're storing up food, who are you storing it for? If you really think that the world is coming to a place where there's going to be nothing on the grocery shelves, are you taking the time? Could you take the time and money to store up extra so that you could actually be the one to start a soup kitchen if something like that were really to happen? I'm not asking at the sacrifice of your family, but I wonder if we start thinking now about this, if this becomes a value for us now, how do we do our daily activities different such that we become that social safety net?
It's such an interesting dynamic that you just touched on that I don't think we have explored or talk about enough, but we're often like flirting and skirting with the dynamics of preparedness, preparing, prepping. But the word prepper, to my understanding, I don't know, do preppers call themselves preppers?
Some.
I often hear it in a very derogatory kind of way, as like a slur against others, but not for nothing, because I do think there is the predominant spirit that I have ever seen when I watch prepper shows, or I've been around people who are prepping for the downfall of society, is more or less antithetical to everything that we've given our life to, which is preparedness for me and mine, to hell with you and yours. That may very well not represent everyone, I'm sure it does not, but there's a spirit in the air around a lot of those conversations that feels and often sounds a lot like that. So I'm curious, I'm just curious to hear you explore a little bit a philosophy of prepping or preparedness that kind of agrees with the urgency and the seriousness, the gravity of that community or industry sees, while kind of shifting the focal length of your lens so it's a little wider and a little longer. Yeah.
I mean, I think it goes back to intention. And I actually oftentimes will find myself down an Instagram rabbit hole or YouTube rabbit hole of these women who are incredibly gifted at couponing. And I think there's even been like HGTV shows or some, I don't know, one of the TV's channels who have shows on this. But these women, they just love couponing. And they will go and buy incredibly cheap, like quality stuff for really cheap prices, but they don't need it for themselves. But they like the act of like getting the deal. And they have turned it into something that is positive for their communities. They keep their community food banks and warehouses and all of that stocked because they can get these amazing deals, and it's something they're good at. And that's how they use that skill. I do see people talking about prepping in terms of their communities, however large or small they are. I think there are those people, and we know them, who are like, yes, I'm storing up for my family. Don't come ask me for anything. Or if you come, I will give you this little bit and you can go on your way. But I just think it's about our intention, and it's about setting that value and intention today before things get hard. So that if we are storing up whatever it is that we feel like we need to store up, could we just store up a little more so that we can care for people beyond just ourselves? And it's a mindset shift too, that I think when you grow in your humanity to a place where you feel like there is enough for everyone, even in scarcity, when you believe that provision will be there for you and yours, and that there's enough to share, that like when you choose that belief, I'm not saying when you like feel it in your heart because the world feels safe. I'm saying even when the world doesn't feel safe, if you've already made these decisions, if you've already set this value, if you already have this mindset that the people around you are additive to your life, they're not there to take from your life, whomever your neighbors may be, then there's more freedom to share and share freely because you can count that there will be provision for the future.
Was there ever a time that was there an event, a time, an incident that like propelled you from kind of the me and mine into, or us as a very, very small definitional category to all of us? Or has it just been more of a long 20-year process?
I have always had a pretty big us. I've never been, even though I can fall into it at times, I've never been a generally like protective person. I have a lot of trust in humanity pretty naturally. And so I think as I've lived out my life, that has just been proven to me over and over and over and over again. But I'm not someone who's come from a really cynical place of everybody's out to get me. I've never really felt like everybody was out to get me. I can be guarded about some things, but I generally do believe and have experienced that provision will be there. So I don't have that moment that I can think of. What about you?
I mean, I probably should have thought about me before I asked you a question and known that it was going to come back. But certainly, it's been a 20-year expanding. There's no sense in which I am not more open, inclusive, non-rejectionist of others than I was in the past. So it's definitely been a 20-year journey, and I hope it's a 20-year journey still. Hence, but I do believe in and have experienced these these moments that are like, I can't think of the right like psychological development term right now, but they basically are leveling up moments. I had one very like existential moment in prayer 17 some years ago that changed my life forever. Like if I ever thought in my entire life that prayer might have mattered for 1 second, which I generally have not ever felt like prayer mattered for 1 second, except maybe to center my own mind, but I've really never sensed that there was like actually this responsive God out there who was listening to me and then did something in response to whatever I asked. Like that's never been my sense of faith or prayer or anything. But there was this one moment, 17-ish, I'm guessing, years ago, that was one of those like stand up from that moment and never be the same again, in a way that like almost sets an iron floor beneath that moment, below which I could never go back into that basement of rejectionism and othering and division. And then there's been a few maybe relationships along the way that I think people who, maybe not through any one moment, but through the course of a relationship, both the friction and the fun, some of the social pressures that I watched them go through to defend me in communities that were maybe suspicious of me as a American or as a Christian or whatever, and seeing a couple of different people navigate those things keep bringing me back to the cookout, so to speak, and like advocate, or in sometimes like really fight for us, bail us out, warn us of really dangerous situations and traps that were being laid for us. There's been a few of those that I think the intensity of that relationship may have been 6 months or 6 years, but like in that time, that window of time, were very transformative.
Yeah. I was doing a little chatting with ChatGPT before we came in here, and I told it, like, I'm about to talk about this thing. What landmines should I avoid? What are the things that could bring harm to others? What are the things maybe that I shouldn't say? And I found this one to be so interesting and inaccurate, but I want to read it because I think that with all the knowledge that the AI is pulling from, this is what it thinks
is wisdom
we should not be saying to Americans.
I'm excited.
It says, don't romanticize struggle or community care. It's not beautiful that we have to do this. It's unjust. Say that. Say we shouldn't have to fill in the gaps, but we do. And until the system changes, we are the system. And I don't think it's romanticizing community care to say that it can be beautiful. I think we have lost something in our reliance on government systems to care for other people because we haven't had to interact with people who are not in our us, but are in our community. It's made it easier to not worry about someone not having food today because, there's a system for that. That's what the church is for. That's the government's job.
Usually, yeah.
And it creates these fractures in our society that leave us further from each other rather than drawn close to one another. And so I just want to say, like, I think some of this may be true. Like if the world worked in the right way, we wouldn't have to do this. We wouldn't have to provide for one another because we would all have the same opportunities, the same access, the same whatever to be able to care for ourselves. But in all of this time that we've been waiting on other systems to care for our neighbor, we have had the capacity to be the system in our communities. We have had the capacity to be the helpers in our communities. We just haven't been pushed across the line to where we were the only system for our communities. And so I'll say, how beautiful could it be to build these systems for our communities in a time when they need it most?
But isn't that what the government wants? Like I genuinely feel this way, but I'm also channeling some voices that I can hear out there who are screaming at you in their headphones and through their screens right now. Isn't that exactly what they want? They want us to take over so that we bear the burden of paying for it while they take our taxes still, spend that on military aid, give tax breaks to the billionaires, and we bear now more burden, not only of the labor, but of the actual cost. The government bears less burden. They doge it out of existence. The billionaires get off scot-free, go live on their private islands. And what? Like, aren't you just doing the government's work by... And I this is not a rhetorical question. Like, I'm really asking you. Aren't you just doing the government's work for them by promoting this idea?
It doesn't matter because it's my work. And yes, I want to work in the systems, around the systems that our government has put in place to hold people accountable, to try and create better systems in our country. I want to and do work that process the way that we're supposed to work that process. And I'm not farming out the responsibility for my neighbor. And at the end of the day, that's what matters to me is, are my neighbors taken care of? Wherever I'm living in the world, are my neighbors taken care of? And I am going to use my ambition. I am going to use my access. I am going to use my character. I'm going to use the things, the businesses, the wealth that I've built for the good of those around me, regardless of what the government says. And if the government wants to be a part of that solution too, great. But I'm not going to stand by wringing my hands saying the government was supposed to do that. Yeah. I'm not going to offload that responsibility for my neighbor. And my fear is that in America, we've gotten so good at individuality and boundaries that we're caging ourselves in. As frustrated that I am that people are being captured by ICE and put into cages without due process, like, I am not going to build a cage for myself. I'm not going to build these walls up around me that isolate me from people who might need something from me. Because I have experienced the joy, the beauty, and the freedom of what it means to enter into relationship with people who are so not like me, and the reciprocity that comes into that. Because so often those of us who have walk into those relationships thinking we're bringing the relief because we have no idea what we're lacking. And when those that we thought we were helping in true reciprocity and friendship give back to us, it fills something in us that we didn't know. We just didn't know wasn't there. And we can't fill it ourselves. There's no amount of boundaries. There's no amount of money. There's no amount of purpose that's going to fill that up, because it turns out we are so interconnected and we need each other so much that I'm just using my gifts to help someone else, and that they're going to bring their gifts back into that relationship. And as a community, we're going to grow stronger.
One of the things that we have said a lot in our community work is that if we're doing it right, we all get, we all give, and we all rise.
Yes.
And that doesn't exist in a lot of modern charity. It doesn't exist in how we have been often taught to think about our tax payments. It's not how, it just doesn't exist in a lot of things unless we're really nurturing it, that we all give, we all get. You actually get something out of giving to someone else. Time, money, respect, whatever. There's a lot to be gotten back out of that. And that it actually can lead to your own rise, your own growth, your own transcendent journey. It's not transactional. It's not meant to be, well, I gave, so what do I get? It's the rise is actually the important part of it all.
Yeah. So here's the invitation. Out of this conversation, if this spurred an idea in you, we would love to hear it. Jeremy's going to tell you how you could become part of our community. But if you have an idea and you don't know how to action it, or you need partners to take action on the idea, come tell us. Let us know what your idea is. Email me directly. I know that we can build a more beautiful world than we're living in right now. And I know that regardless of how horrific the world could become around us, we can be agents of joy and access and a better world, even in the midst of horror. But we have to want to do it together, and we have to be brave with one another to share ideas and to take those risks with one another. I'm brainstorming now with some friends about what can be done in the short term before we really know what's going to happen. And we don't have enough ideas. So let's bring our ideas, let's broaden our networks, and let's figure out what kind of safety net we can build so that as people start to fall, there's another one to catch them.
If this is the kind of thing you're into, if you want friends who are like you moving in the same direction, love for you to join us, love for you to become a member of the Department of Peace. You can go to joindop.com to become a member today. If you just want to support the show, help us keep the mics on and the lights on and keep growing and reaching more people, you can do that at joindop.com as well. Otherwise, subscribe, like below, comment, all that kind of stuff, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.